Hello everyone, welcome to Hot Topics Plus, where we take a deeper dive into the hot topics that you will find each month in your advanced magazine. I'm your host David, and I'm joined here by our beloved managing editor.
My name is Brandon. Great to be here with you, David. Great to be here with you all. And it is getting a little hot in here with all these hot topics. Tell you what, it's good to be here, David.
Boy, I tell you, it sure is. All right, well, since it's our first edition here of Hot Topics Plus, why don't we hop right into it?
Let's do it.
Now, in our first hot topic that we see in our magazine, there's an interesting game that I had never heard about called snooker. Had you heard of snooker before you read that hot topic?
No, and in fact, when I first saw this, David, I thought they were talking about that beloved candy bar. And I actually got up from my office and went to the store because I was hungry to get some candy. No, not really, but I never heard of snooker, and it is something it's a pretty big thing. It's in the UK is where they have this tournament, right?
Yeah,
but it's a game that I'd never heard of, so I'm learning along with you guys.
Absolutely. It looks very similar to the game of pool, but it has its own unique rules, its own unique ways that they do their tournaments. I watched a little bit of a snooker game, and I found it really pulled me in because it's very tense. It's very quiet. It's actually similar to perhaps watching golf.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But more interesting, I think, than
golf.
watching golf.
I don't know, golf. I like to play golf every now and then, but I think it's kind of hard to watch.
For sure. Well, to be fair, I was watching snooker, but I was not just watching regular people play snooker. I was watching one of the apparently most celebrated players in the history of the game, a guy named Stephen Hendry.
Oh yeah, we talk about him in our article, right? And
That's right.
He is famous for being the youngest champion, the youngest world champion, right?
Yes, yeah. He was one of the best, most prolific player in the game for years, and then he retired. But after 9 years in retirement, he has returned to the snooker tables and is going to be competing in the Betfred World Snooker Championship. Mm-hmm. I know that you're a guy who also enjoys sports. You watch sports. You have some connection to the sports teams. How do you feel about old legends who retired maybe coming back to the game?
Well, that's a good question, and it reminds me actually of the NFL, the National Football League. Sometimes this happens. For example, a quarterback will retire, and then a few years later, maybe will come back. It reminds me of like Brett Favre. And we talked about him years ago in advance, if you remember that. And people come down kind of on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. I think a lot of people welcome back these players, especially if you're a big fan, you're excited to see them back in the game. Sometimes there are others who think, okay, your time is done. It's, let someone else play the game, right?
Right, of course, yeah. And which side do you fall on?
Well, if I'm a big fan, for example, I love Peyton Manning. He is a famous NFL football player. He played at the University of Tennessee, and I'm from Tennessee, so I would love if he got back in the game, but, I don't know. I want to see them play at their best, right? So if they come back and they're not as good, that's a big letdown.
For sure. Maybe let the old legends go their own way and let the new guys step in.
Yeah,
right?
If their time is really up, hey, if they can still play, go for it. See what happens.
Well, speaking of oldies but goodies, the other hot topic that we talk about in our advanced feature is the New York International Antiquarian Book Fair. Really a mouthful.
Yes.
Right there, right. Personally, I have a great love for this sort of thing. I have great memories of going to a bookstore in my hometown with my mom. It was a secondhand bookstore. They had a lot of old books. We would go there, we would drink our coffee, we would talk, we would find books, share what we found. I have great memories with these kinds of things, but not everyone does. Yeah. So I was wondering, what are your feelings about secondhand bookstores, and how do you feel about old books? Do you think that they're worth keeping around?
Well, that sounds delightful. I'd love to go to one of those bookstores and hang out with you and your mom and sip some coffee and choose some old books. I've never done that, but I do like the idea of finding old things, not just books. I love going and looking at architecture from maybe many decades ago and just kind of taking all that in. So for an old book, I just like to look at the pages and think about what time period it came from and how the book looks, and maybe you'd like to buy one and put on your bookshelf at home because it looks really cool, right? So I think
Right.
there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that's what people are after. They like the feel of the pages, the look of it, and just going back in time by seeing the world through the eyes of these authors from ages ago, 100 years ago or more. It can be really really kind of insightful.
Yeah.
In fact, I even heard that the British Army in the UK, they referred to maps that were used in an antique travel book from the 1800s when they were planning their military campaigns.
No way.
True
Come
story,
on.
true story,
Wow.
because the maps were so well done. So
That's incredible.
I guess it's worth it to keep these antiques around. They still have much to teach us. Finally, we also are talking about Earth Day.
All right, Earth Day is this month. We talk about that a lot of times in the month of April, right? And so that reminds us of our purpose of taking care of the earth, of stewardship, right?
That's right. Now, Earth Day is every year on April 22nd. And I just want to talk a little bit about the first Earth Day. Now, the first Earth Day, and I mention this because when I was growing up, we did celebrate Earth Day. But it was not necessarily a really big thing. It was like, oh, it's Earth Day, let's draw a picture of the Earth and talk about recycling and stuff. But at the time of the first Earth Day in 1970, it was the United States did not have any real set regulations about pollution, nothing significant.
Yeah.
Factories could pollute with impunity. People were littering, there was trash everywhere, and it was in response to a terrible oil spill in California that a California Senator Gaylord Nelson, declared April 22nd to be Earth Day. So and the tone of the first Earth Day was that of we are fighting to avoid our own extinction. Now, that really struck a chord with me because with the COP26 conferences that occurred, I guess, last year and maybe into this year a little bit, there was very much the same tone of we are in a code red. We are going to be extinct unless we do something. What do you think about that? Do you think there are some kind of connections, some parallels between that moment and this one?
Well, I think you bring up some good points, David, that moment many years ago, because of that oil spill, it got people's attention to say, hey, we need to do a better job of taking care of the planet. And people are doing the same today, but there are a lot more resources, there's a lot more data and science behind that. And so I think the call is the same, that we need to be good stewards of the earth and we need to do our part. And sometimes we can be overwhelmed by all that we see, not only in this issue, but other issues as well. But I think when it comes down to it, we can only do our part, right? And if we do that together, I think we can have good results.
I'm glad you used that phrase, doing our part, because on the second Earth Day, there was a speech that was given by a guy named William D. Ruckelshaus. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there was one part that stood out to me, and he just says that the focus of Earth Day 2 is the individual, the responsibility each of us bears to move beyond awareness to action that will return man to a balance with nature. Do you see credence to that? That, the biggest thing we can do is not just look at the information and kind of be worried by it, but to take personal action.
Yeah, that's good. So we're all pretty aware of what we should do, but now it's up to us to actually have an action plan. And it just starts with one little thing at a time, right? We don't do everything at once, but what can we do today? And then we can add to that as we go.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this month's Hot Topics. It's been a real blast. I hope that you guys enjoy this feature and also see it as a great learning opportunity and an opportunity to explore the world in new ways. Until next time, I'm your host, David. Our beloved managing editor, Brandon. We'll see you next month for another edition of Hot Topics Plus.